Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Hi there. I'd like to welcome you to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega, and we're here to talk about happiness because happiness, as you know, has always been, always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about the fact that happiness is hot. What do you think, George? How hot is it?
Happiness is very hot. I mean, like, it's been heating up throughout the last 3 or 4 decades, actually. Mm-hmm. You know, when experiments on happiness first began, there were just a few. There were, you know, a few hundred. And, like, it seems that each year that's gone by since then, the experiments, the studies, the published studies have been increasing exponentially. Now there's, like, well over 3,000, and again, it's increasing each year.
You're right, and of course the focus has gone to positive psychology, which is really another way of talking about happiness in psychology.
Yeah, I mean, what Martin Seligman did back in 1998, you know, Martin Seligman was the past president of the American Psychological Association. He was voted in on the, you know, the most number of ballots ever. He's number 31 of all psychologists of all time. He created this positive psychology movement in 98. Because, like, you know, psychology had for so many years been focused on what was wrong, what was negative.
Right.
So he decided, you know, we need to study what's right, the positive emotions. And then what he did is he decided that the aim of positive psychology should be happiness. And he even titled the book that he just published a couple of years ago,
Authentic Happiness.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, he's done a lot to promote both positive psychology and its aim, happiness.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just the other day, I got a phone call about my happiness club, and a woman wanted to know. She actually knew, you know, the next meeting is May 20th. It starts at 7 o'clock. She knew where it was, but what she wanted to know was who's speaking. And I said, well, I'll be doing some of the talking, and my name's Lionel Ketchian. Glad to know you. So she said, well, what are your credentials? And I said, oh, well, I don't have any credentials. And she said, well, are you a psychologist? I said, no. You know, are you a therapist or anything? I said, no, I basically am a human being that's been happy, and I talk about happiness. And she said, so you have no credentials? I said, absolutely, I have no credentials. I said, I write a column in the, you know, in the Fairfield Citizen newspaper, and I said, as far as that goes, I would say that psychologists have the credentials, but for the most part, they don't know anything about happiness. And then she says, you know, you're right, I'll be at the meeting. My name is so-and-so, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. And the fact is, I mean, I'm telling the truth, but it's only lately, the shift is just, we just saw the shift with the psychologists, and now they're going to start learning more about what is this all about? What are the components to it? How do you become happy? How do you stay happy? Who's happy? It is a hot topic because when psychology has finally focused on it, you know, congratulations. This is exciting times we live in.
Oh yeah, and what's happened is, like, over the first 40 years, they focused on, as you were saying, who's happy, how happy are they, what is responsible for their happiness, you know, what detracts from happiness.
Right.
So now they have a fairly clear understanding of that, and now they're going to the next phase, which is, like, how do we develop instruments and programs and techniques and methodologies to help people become happier.
Right.
And that is the exciting part, because that is the purpose of happiness research.
Right. And as much as I'm aware of these things, so, like, I read The Power of Positive Thinking when I was a kid, and I'm going to be 59 this year, so it gives you an idea how long ago that was. It was written 40 years ago. And my son, who's 31, has been reading the book. And I haven't read it in decades. And he said to me, Dad, do you realize that Reverend Norman Vincent Peale has a chapter on happiness? And I said, no. He said, do you realize he's saying everything you say about it being a choice? And I said, no. I said, I forgot. I mean, at the time I read it, I really didn't connect with it. It really didn't resonate or vibrate with me at the time. And don't forget, 40 years ago, we really didn't know what happiness was. So when these, I think, brilliant people were speaking to us about happiness, it went right over our head. We had no idea what they're talking about. In fact, today, we're becoming more aware of it because of shows like ours, George, and also everybody's getting involved with it now. It is hot.
Oh yeah, that's a good. I mean, what happened also? It isn't even just as far as Norman Vincent Peale. It was like the Greeks understood this.
You betcha.
I mean, like for example, happiness being dependent upon our thoughts, on what we think, on how we perceive the world. They understood this back then, but it's only now. It's only now that scientists have taken it seriously. But beyond that, you know, it's getting into the media. I mean,
it's exciting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Aristotle started something back then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they understood it, but as you were saying, it was above people.
Yes.
And now, finally, I think with the New Age movement of the 70s, 60s, and 70s, people began to understand that, like, you know, materialism, getting richer, getting more powerful, these kinds of means that we thought would lead to greater happiness don't necessarily, don't really to a great extent.
That's true.
So they went back. They went back to the early literature, who actually understood it, and why. Why did you know, the certain methods work whereas certain methods didn't, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just in the last month, in March, you know, as you know, in fact, you told me about it. Oprah Winfrey, in her magazine O, did a whole month of work on happiness. I mean, she talked about happiness. She talked about it from everywhere to buying new shoes to the work that Dan Baker has done with his What Happy People Know at Canyon Ranch in his new book. So she's into it. She's enlightening people. And I might add, I think Oprah Winfrey has really understood it on a personal level, because in her case, I think decisions that she had made in the very beginning propelled her into a powerful role in society as a result of taking responsibility, standing up for herself, and facing her fears, because I feel happiness is the opposite of fear. So it's worked for her, and she's a good example of happiness in action. Yeah,
and speaking of her article, I mean, she devoted the last entire issue of her magazine to happiness. And the key difference is that, you know, there have been articles about happiness for decades now, you know, many more now than before. But until recently, those articles basically focused on kind of like folk wisdom, you know, the idea that, you know, well, you know, this is how to be happy, but it's not really based on any experiment or any science.
Right.
Now, so much of Oprah's articles, you know, because it wasn't just one, it was about 5 or 6 different features on happiness. They presented the research. They presented the most up-to-date research.
Yes, they did.
So again, it's not, you know, it's in the press, it's in the media, and it's also being complemented with the real science.
Yeah, I think they even presented some of, is it Sonia Lubinsky's work, and she's been working under Martin Seligman. So she got very in-depth with this and did a good job of it, I thought.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what else has been hot? I understand you know something about Great Britain and what's going on over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you know, governments should be running to help people become as happy as possible. That should be their purpose.
We had a show on that once.
Exactly, exactly. The utilitarian philosophy of the greatest happiness for the greatest number. And so what Great Britain has done is, like, they've actually commissioned, it's an unofficial study, I'm not sure why it had to be that way, but the cabinet decided to launch a major study of happiness to determine what their government, what Great Britain can do as a country to facilitate the greatest happiness of their citizens directly. You know, because obviously everything our government does or should do is intended to do that, but this is a direct means, a direct effort to understand happiness in its essence, you know, as, you know, what it takes to become happier, what works, what doesn't, and devise and implement policies according to that, those studies. Have you uncovered much research on this at all, or anything at this point that's, you know, they're validating or understanding better? No, basically they're echoing what scientists have known for years, the idea that you know, above the poverty line, money just doesn't make that much of a difference, that even health, physical health, if you're not healthy, then it can make some difference, but, you know, happiness takes more than just health, you know, And it basically highlights actually really what scientists have known for the last 20, 30 years, but it's just very significant that a government is undertaking the task of just making it a very concrete and probably very influential policy study.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talking about countries, I know that what I've been exposed to is that the country of Bhutan has actually, I have some literature on it. I got it off the web. They have something that they call the gross national happiness. It doesn't seem to make sense because you think of gross national product, but what they're saying is product is important, but commercialism is important, but if it isn't balanced with our welfare, there's an imbalance going on. So it's almost like that materialism is a wonderful thing, but if it doesn't support human beings for who they really are, there's something lacking and there's a deficit there. So the country of Bhutan is run by a king. He's been in office, I think, since the 70s, and Bhutan is located right near Tibet, where Tibet, used to be, and so they pretty much could see the, Himalayan mountains from their vantage point, and it's a country that's 100% Buddhist. So it has this, and then of course there's the Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. So Buddhism has very, very the highest regard for happiness and considers it the number one thing of all things. And they're right. But it's interesting that a religion and a country and countries are starting to understand how important happiness is. I mean, people might laugh at us and say, "Oh, aha, you got a happiness show," but laugh now. But the world is starting to understand happiness like it never, or not only like it never did before, but probably like it should have, but hasn't. So I'm rather pleased. In fact, I can also report that actually in Bhutan they had a pretty big global discussion and summit on February 21st of this year, and they brought many people together and they did their reports, and a psychologist attended, and different people, and His Highness the Crown Prince Dasho Keshar Namagal Wanachuk, who graced the closing of the seminar, thought that the philosophy of the Bhutanese people has positive relevance to all nations and communities around the world. And the other thing that I personally found out is that in our Happiness Club meeting on June 10th, we're having one in Fairfield, Connecticut, and we're having a guest speaker and also a person who does films, slides. His name is Daryl Hawk, and he travels around the world to the most remote places. He's going to show us shots of people from around the world, and from the South Pole to the North Pole to tribal areas of the, of Africa, South America, Europe, and he'll show us villages that are poor but happy. And the other thing he's going to do in November.
Oh, wait a minute! I just talk about poor and happy. I mean, like this April, we're taping this in April. World Values Surveys, who is based in the University of Michigan, they're actually the #1 institution that conducts these kinds of satisfaction in life surveys. Their results for the happiest countries in the world right now are Nigeria's #1, Mexico's #2, Venezuela's #3, El Salvador 4, and Puerto Rico 5. Now these are not rich countries.
Right.
I mean, that's extremely significant.
There it is. There it is. And in November, he's gonna go there with the blessings of the king, and he's got a 1-month excursion. He's gonna go and film extensively, and he's very interested in the work of that. He's the one who told me about this whole thing going on with happiness. So, if countries are adopting it, there must be something to this.
Yeah. It's Ed Diener is the #1 authority on happiness in the United States. I'm not sure he understands it all that well, and I say that because he concentrates most of his studies on understanding what makes people happy and what doesn't, but he hasn't advanced to the point where he's actually conducting happiness increase experiments. But nonetheless, a couple of years ago, he actually published an article in a major psychology magazine proposing a national index of happiness for this country. So yeah, it's coming. You know, it's not just in Great Britain and Bhutan. You know, we're having that consciousness emerge here in the United States as well.
How is that? You know, in what ways is it? You know, let me draw you into that. Maybe you could share with people how that's coming about.
Well, I mean, again, back to Seligman. Seligman is probably doing the most out of anyone to promote happiness. He's raised about $30 million for his positive psychology, and again, happiness is the point of positive psychology. And what he's also doing is he's bringing happiness into corporations. He's training, as of last year, he began training what he terms authentic happiness coaches. And these coaches are like mental health professionals, teachers, executive coaches that are being trained by him to actually teach top-level executives how to become happier as a means of increasing their company's productivity. So it's getting into the workforce.
Into mainstream America, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And George, I know you made some notes that this has launched many different things. I mean, as you say, coaching has become. I know I do coaching with people, and it's primarily happiness. I mean, it could be not under the guise, but under the description of overcoming fear. But then again, since fear is the opposite of happiness, here we are back on happiness again. And happiness can help eradicate fear. And of course, you know, it's almost like bringing light to where there's darkness, and then the fear is gone. It really isn't scaring away the fear, but being more aware of the light. And I think that happiness gives us that power. And this is a wonderful thing that we have.
Yeah, and again, I guess what we're doing is, because like they've been working on overcoming fear and anger and sadness, the various negative emotions for many decades. I mean, psychology is really about that, psychiatry. But now, you know, since the last decade, they've begun to just say, hey, wait a minute, let's focus, let's study the positive.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the psychologists and the psychiatrists that have been doing that now for quite a few years, or for example, when you go into psychiatry, Dr. William Glasser in his book Choice Theory talks about happiness, talks about the fact that you choose to depress, and there's the word choice coming into the picture. And when you choose to depress, your natural immune system, your natural chemicals, that the serotonin levels will naturally drop as a result of your attitude. Change your attitude. And without drugs, and this is a psychiatrist speaking, when it comes to depression, your serotonin levels go up. Now that's in his books, and his books have been around for about 5 years, and his work has been implemented in schools. So he's out there. Richard Carlson, he's a PhD, he's a psychologist. He wrote a lot of books, but primarily the ones that people would recognize is You Can Be Happy No Matter What, and Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And he's saying psychology isn't doing the job until you really learn happiness, because happiness really puts it over for everyone. We need happiness, and we have to understand it more.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I think we get excited about.
Yeah, and another reason why happiness is becoming so much hotter now is because it's being valued not just for its own benefit, but for the other benefits that you were referring to, like increased immune system, increased health. Increased physical health, increased emotional health, increased income generation. I mean, there's a whole body of evidence now that's emerging from scientific studies that demonstrate that as we become happier, it's not just a matter of becoming happier, it's a matter of improving ourselves, our communities, the entire world.
Wow, yeah. And so much is going on. There's so many happiness websites. I mean, we have happinessclub.com, but there's hordes of them. There's millions of them, and it's fantastic. It really is. It's great. It's wonderful. And we have the Happiness Club. We have the show. It has branched out into a number of things. I mean, it's taking on a life of its own, I think, and it's becoming very, very important.
Yeah. I think it was a matter of time, because I mean, we had like the I guess the agricultural revolution many centuries ago, where we learned how to grow food so much more efficiently.
Right.
And then we went to the industrial revolution. We mechanized. We learned that machines could do so much of our work for us.
Right.
And so now, like, we're into the age of, I guess a lot of it is services now. Our economy is like so service-based here in the United States. And the idea that money, that wealth, that materialism, you know, from the Industrial Revolution, etc., would make us much happier. We finally realized, no, these things are very nice. They're excellent. We don't want to do without them, whatever. But they just aren't what's essential for becoming happier. And these things were mechanisms, they were strategies that people relied on, that people thought were going to bring great happiness to themselves and to the rest of the world. Now we finally realize, no, they have very limited effect. So people are saying, well, what's going to work?
Yeah, they certainly don't bring us happiness. They bring us comfort. They bring us, you know, a roof over our head and many other things, and then the ability to want more. But they haven't really given us happiness. And so if that hasn't done it, what does? And the answer is, you know, is why this is spread so much now with all that's going on.
Right, and also, like, getting back to the coaching, I think what's helped us along has been that you know, science, psychology, especially psychiatry, has studied depression. You know, there are people among us who are depressed, and there are insurance policies that cover either psychopharmacs, drugs,
pharmacological,
right, or just therapy. And actually, the therapy works better, cognitive behavioral therapy, because the effects are much longer lasting. But I think, see, that leaves out a lot of people. I mean, the average level of happiness here in the United States is only 70%, and these people may not qualify for insurance to go to see therapists to become happy or whatever. So now these happiness coaches are bringing happiness to people who ordinarily wouldn't have a means to access it.
That's true. In fact, happiness coaches in some areas are taking over for, you know, traditional therapy.
Yeah.
Because happiness, you know, because how do you go to a psychologist to understand happiness if they don't understand it?
Well, yeah, and also I think, you know, you started the show with the story about credentials and happiness, and I think there's one thing that needs to be understood is that, like, I think the only credential one really needs, or a very important credential for happiness, is to be very happy, to understand it well enough to experience it.
True.
And so, like, you could have, like, a lot of degrees, and you might be able to teach it through a book, and, you know, you might be able to talk about it, but if you feel it, if you understand it well enough to live it every day, then generally you can understand it well enough to teach it.
Well, I'm glad you said that, that if we can understand it well enough to live it every day, because I have a PhD, Being Happy Daily.
Cool.
And actually I give out that degree to people who've taken my class at Sacred Heart, and I consider it an honor. I mean, not all of us have PhDs, but PhDs, they're more important because you got to live with yourself every day, so this is a good start.
That's the thing. I mean, people are finally realizing that, you know, liking ourselves. I mean, like, just the idea, yeah, we're with ourselves all the time, so we've got to like ourselves. And again, people are realizing that our work, our money, our social circumstances, everything in our lives is designed to make us happy. It's finally, you know, people are honing in on it.
Yeah.
You know, after so many decades, so many centuries.
It's true. It's true. And what else can you share with people, George, that's going on?
Well, I mean, you know,
Look at the chart. I want you to.
I say the happiness clubs. I mean, like, you know, you started the first ever happiness club in the world, you know, for 4 years now. Now Amy, our co-host, has one in San Francisco.
Yeah. And actually last Thursday evening we opened we had our first meeting. Jane had one in Niagara Falls, Canada. So we have our first international club meeting.
Yeah, and this is exciting because, I mean, one thing that we've understood is that you don't need advanced knowledge to understand happiness. It is very simple. It's something that all one has to do is understand a few basic fundamentals and then just practice them. So these clubs are perfect vehicles for that.
And they're great because people love to meet other people. I mean, there's another human aspect of happiness. Lighten up, meet another human being, share yourself for no reason at all. That's the best reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I want to, you know, I'm actually in the process of creating a brand new show. It's going to be shown here in White Plains and hopefully other places. I got in touch with Michael Fordyce, who devised and conducted the first ever happiness increase experiment.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time.
Oh yeah, he was a pioneer, 1977. And he's got his experiment basically on 14 videos, 1-hour videos. I'm gonna split them into half-hour videos for the show format, present 28 episodes. And what I'd like to do after that is then present his episodes to like psychiatric facilities for clients, because I mean, the essence of emotional health is happiness. I mean, because what good is anything?
Sure.
What good is emotional health without the happiness? So the idea is to take this kind of knowledge and not just present it on TV for the regular viewer, but present it in settings where actually they can measure the client's level of happiness before and after, and really, create a working methodology for increasing happiness to all populations.
Yeah, it's great. And one of the other things that we wanted to cover is the Happiness and Health PBS special that's coming up June 11th. If you live in Connecticut, it'll be on PBS stations. And that's exciting because actually the Happiness Club will be live on PBS, and we're going to take one of those marathon things with phone calls, and we're going to show this health and happiness DVD with Bernie Siegel and I. It all started with an interview with him for the Happiness Show, and it ended rather than being just shown on our station. PBS is going to pick it up and show it in its entirety over 3 hours, and we'll be there live and talking about it. And I think it's wonderful that health and happiness have come together. I mean, I'm excited about that because it always belonged together. It really did. It really was part of one another. And it's only now that we live in 2004 that the awareness has finally come to the door.
Yeah, and to have it on a PBS special, that is amazing. That is great, because so many people, I mean, the interview, I've seen, a substantial portion of it, and it really is illuminating. And I suppose you'll be talking about happiness also on the side?
Well, I hope so. We'll see how much they let me talk.
Yeah, because that would be great, because a lot of people watch those specials,
Yeah.
So they generate a lot of income for the station, and that would be a perfect vehicle to get a lot of this knowledge out.
Yeah, it'll be great. And actually, we'll make the DVD available to people once it airs. And so I think the exposure's there. The happiness is hot, as we said.
Oh yeah, and it's getting hotter and hotter. It's great.
It is, and I think we're helping heating it up just a little bit.
Oh yeah,
You're doing a good job.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this is about that time of the show where we say, where did all the time go? But there it is. It's gone. George, it's been fun. It really, every show is so much fun with you. It really is.
Thanks. Yeah, I've enjoyed it, definitely.
Great. Well, that's about all we have time for today. Thanks very much for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. Be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next week here on The Happiness Show. Take care. Be happy.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.